All right, so I just wanted to share first a little video clip, and it has to do with kind of communication and grammar and rigor, and it's just kind of for fun to start out with.
Miss Smith, I need to talk with you about your students' performance.
Of course. I am doing the best I can. But their performance is not improving.
Your test scores seem to indicate that your class is not rigorous enough. Do you include rigor in your class assignments?
My students are either on, or below, grade level, so I'm not sure how you expect me to include rigor. But yes, I include rigor in my assignments.
We need rigor in all class assignments. Have you told your students that your assignments will be rigorous?
Yes, I said, class, our assignments will be rigorous.
And are your assignments rigorous?
Yes, my assignments are rigorous.
How do you know?
Most of my students are failing our unit on parts of speech. They say it's because my class is too rigorous.
Your students wouldn't fail if they cared about your lessons. Do they care about your lessons?
They don't seem to.
How do you know?
They said, we don't care about parts of speech.
Is that because your assignments aren't rigorous?
The students say they are too rigorous. I said to them, you have been learning parts of speech since 2nd grade. How can you still not know parts of speech? And they said, we don't care about parts of speech.
It shows that students can do rigorous work if the lessons are fun. Are your lessons fun?
Parts of speech are not fun. But yes, my lessons are fun.
Tell me about your first lesson.
I made up a song for every part of speech, and the students helped me make up a dance to go with the song.
Was it fun?
Yes, it was fun.
How do you know?
The students said, this is fun. But they still didn't know the parts of speech.
Tell me about your next lesson.
I brought in different flavors and colors of pudding. The students got to finger paint the parts of speech with pudding and then eat their favorite parts of speech. I mean, pudding.
Was it fun?
Yes, it was fun.
How do you know?
The students said, this is fun.
Then did they know the parts of speech?
No, not very well.
Did you ask the students why they didn't know the parts of speech?
Yes, they said, we do not care about parts of speech.
Perhaps they would care more about parts of speech if your class was more rigorous.
I hate my life.
So that's just a funny little clip to kind of get started, and how communication is a really big part. And I think, you know, it's just kind of a funny little thing to kind of remind us about, and the communication that we use is really important. So the meaning of this meeting is really to, in the beginning of the year, I talked with Jean to see what was the need of literacy at our school, and she said that one of the things that was really needed was some sort of checklist or screening tool to be used throughout the grades, because then she told me a story about someone in the middle school who, Vicki was saying, had issues with not really knowing where to put the words in the margins and spacing, and not really sure about structure of sentences, and how could the student go from each grade and miss this when they got to the middle school. And so how can, you know, and so she said, how could we kind of catch that from happening so kind of late in the game. And so I thought about that, and it made me kind of really, you know, think about that problem and what's really happening, because from what we talked about last week in our whole writing program, and how everyone, it was just really neat with our writing, just to see what everyone's doing with their writing, and to see the progression from the grades, and to really just be able to, I mean, I left the room and said, wow, we write a lot here. And so I just thought, you know, we do a lot, and our program's really strong, and it was just really neat to be able to kind of get everybody's communication and be able to collaborate. And so, and then that also happened when we had our science meeting a couple years back, when we met with Peter, and we talked to him about our program, and he was really wowed about it. And I just remember thinking, wow, Marge does a lot in science, and it was just neat to see kind of the progression from grade to grade, and I thought that was neat in the writing too. So that being said, I thought, well, I wonder why that's happening. Is it more of a deeper issue? Is there something else going on? So today I just wanted to talk about that need, and then also I did some research on just a few informal assessments that I know a lot of us are doing in the classroom, but then how could we use those, and then a way to kind of to suggest the needs. So those are the few things I'm going to talk about. And what we do is, which we all know is, we have formal assessments and informal assessments. And the formal assessments are, we use the ERBs and the Woodcock-Johnson in first, second, and third grade. So we use those for our formal assessment scores. But then we can also use informal assessments, and I know most of you do. And then we have one informal assessment that we all do, the writing assessment, and that is a really big part of how we can see their developing in their writing. But so that's something we're already doing. And then I just have three informal assessments that I want to kind of bring up again and talk about, and then share how I would want to use those with my idea. And I just wanted to stop right here and say, some of you I want you to kind of bear with me, as maybe some of you feel a little frustrated with that story about the middle school student, because I felt a little frustrated and thought, there must be something else going on. What else? So as I was looking for informal assessments and going through that, I was really thinking hard about, the bigger issue, and if there is a deeper issue. So one way of informal assessments, which is a tried and true, and I know everybody does it, is observation, and then along with observation, anecdotal notes. And so it's really, one way I found is that if you just kind of make notes and say, David did not listen today, that's not really a very beneficial note. But I found a good idea about putting it on a mailing label, and then writing the date, and then something that's a little bit more specific during paired reading. Help partner use context on unfamiliar word. David seems to be using what was taught in yesterday's lesson. So it's a little bit more specific, and then once it's on the mailing label, it could be put on a permanent document, and then that would be something, quick and easy. And I know we all probably a lot of you use mental notes, and and you're able to adjust your teaching that way, but this would maybe be a little bit more documenting the notes, just to, if there was an issue with a student, then you would be able to look back on it during report cards. But then also it could be for kind of a continual documentation of the student as it goes from grade to grade. And then a big part of what Jean wanted me to do was look at checklists. And so I came up with 5 different checklists that I wanted to share with you. And so I have an article that I'm going to this is, this article goes through and talks about screening checklists, and there's 3 different types of the screening checklist here that I wanted to feature. And so the first one is gives a little summary in the article, and then later on it has the actual checklist. And the first one is really to be done in kindergarten, but I thought that it'd be neat to look at. It's midway kindergarten, maybe even first grade, but I thought this one is interesting just to glance at, to see what kind of things, if you had this checklist, or maybe you have another checklist, that would be something that if a lot of things are checked off, then we could recommend for further assessment. And so it goes through talking about, language and certain things that might come up for, being a trouble when they're trying to read and learning to read, and also visual perception, fine motor, and then it goes into self-concept. So there's a bunch of things that would be maybe helpful to look for and to just do, and maybe it wouldn't be every child, or maybe it would be, or maybe just if you see if you saw someone that was having a few issues, you could be able to use this. And then the second one, the handwriting observation, is could be for grades K through 5, and this one is more specifically on a needs basis, I think. And there's a lot of there's some students who have maybe what's the deeper issue with the writing, writing and forming the letters. So what you would do is you'd have your samples, your writing samples, and then just use this kind of form to see, and if there are a lot of check marks, then that it would be helpful to get further assessment. Something like this would also be helpful if you're trying to provide documentation for further assessment, for them to have some other things looked at. This one would be helpful. And then the last one here in the article is showing the spelling error analysis checklist, and this could be done in every grade, and beginning or end of year depending. And the thing that this would be helpful for would be just to see, if you have a few writing samples, just to see what are the errors that they're making. And this would be really helpful for the next teacher to see, kind of what issues they're struggling with. Obviously, it goes to some really more difficult, the advanced suffixes, and then some additional things at the bottom. So those are 3 forms of checklists. And then I didn't want to print them all out, but I just wanted to show you that I have a writing continuum checklist and a reading one as well. And this would be where you could, write the date, and then it goes through the different developmental stages of writing. And so as a beginning, and then beginning emergent writer. And so this would be for one student, and then as they're progressing as a writer, and I can see this kind of, as they go from grade to grade, this could be used to kind of track where they are. And obviously it's going to, the one negative thing or thing about checklists is that it can be a little stagnant, but children are continually progressing. So, but if you record the date, then you can kind of see where they're going. And then we go on to I'm going to make this a little smaller. Beginning writing, and then expanding writing, and then bridging writing. So this is where I kind of see kind of third grade specifically, and with our students, they might kind of, kind of that first one, probably a lot of the kindergartners are already doing that, and so, So,
Sorry.
no, I mean, I think if we go back, if I can find it.
Yeah, they do that.
Yeah, so they talk about their writing, they'll, label the words. I mean, they're probably, most of them are doing that, or somewhat. And then, so, a lot of this, they're probably more emergent writers and doing some of these things a little bit. So we're, we're a little bit ahead on that continuum, I think, so.
Where do you get these types of checklists? Is there a source that you think of? This is like an authority?
Yeah, I can, no, this is one I found in my research, and I can, if anyone, I can print those off, and I found it it was literacy assessment. There's a lot of checklists. Yeah, handbook
That's
one.
amazing.
Do you have that one?
Yeah, that's incredible.
And then this one is the literacy assessment, where I got some of my information, which has a lot of these checklists. But you're right that it's not, there's not one checklist. There's a lot. So that is, so that was the writing, the beginning, and then it goes on to fluent writer, connects paragraphs in logical sequence, and goes through, and then we have the proficient writer, and then the last one is the independent writer, and so I also have one with reading too that kind of does the same continuum and goes from the beginning to the ending of reader and writer, and so those are some other examples. And then let's get back on track with that. Other thing that I thought would be really good for us at our school is to, maybe really kind of go off of self-reflection and, writing self-reflective paragraph. Or maybe kind of, you make up your own year-end questions to ask them how they are doing as a reader and a writer. And maybe they write a couple, in the younger grades, write a couple sentences, and then older, like a couple paragraphs. Or you could, just have a couple questions and then write about, kind of reflect. And self-reflection, as really just helps them think about themselves as a reader and a writer, and to kind of, go deeper into thinking about themselves. And it also helps us see how they're doing and how they think they're doing in reading and writing. And so kind of based on these, where I was thinking, I know a lot of you, this is not new information, and so going back to kind of what the story, and thinking about just the, we're doing a lot of assessments, we're doing informal assessments in the classroom, but how can we communicate that specifically with the middle school? And so I thought about our math program and how we have, a really strong math program, and we, and Allison knows, what the issues are with math, and I was wondering, you know, what is the difference between our math and our reading and writing, and I was thinking about it a lot, and I was thinking about how could we kind of solve that communication, and then also just be able to kind of put everything together. So what I was thinking was coming up with a literacy binder like we have with the math binders. And I was thinking we could have the kind of the cover page like we do with our math binders, and then have the formal assessments written, like their ERB scores, and then maybe the Woodcock-Johnson would be in there, and then maybe a few informal assessments that we choose could also go in there, and then it would, and we do that for each kid, and then it would go from grade to grade just like our math binders do. And the reason why I was thinking about that, because I was thinking about our ERB binders, and I was thinking about the writing assessments in the file cabinet, and how they're in different locations, and the Woodcock-Johnson test is maybe in the ERB folder. So there's just a lot of different locations for these assessments, and I don't know about you, but I've pulled out the writing assessments and copied them to look through every writing sample, and it took a really long time, and I've gone through each of them, and I don't know how many people really go through the writing assessments to just see you know, how they did in previous years. But if all of the, you know, if you saw the writing assessments in, you know, one binder where you could see, oh, all of these second graders, if I had this binder and all the second graders were, you know, at this level, or, oh, no, they don't know about indenting. So then, you know, I know kind of where they are, and I can see it all, and it's all there together, and then maybe with a few of the informal assessments added in there, and then as it builds. One thing that I saw was that Jess, she was talking to me last year about the writing assessments, and how she was saying how Lucas is a really great writer and really developed, and I thought that was really neat to see his progress from each grade, that he's really developed as a writer, and I thought that was really neat. But because she was able to go back and look at all of his writing assessments, but if it was just right there, it would maybe be a little bit more helpful. And then, so I was just, so that was kind of what I was kind of thinking, and, you know, really thinking about, and you know, is that something that I just want to now be able to kind of get your thoughts and kind of your feedback on what you think initially about that.
About having a binder?
Yeah.
Well, I think having a binder would be a really good idea, but I think that it would be overfilled really quickly. That's the only thing. I think that there'll be more papers, so I'm just not sure by the time you get to like 5th grade whether you be having one binder or two. But I think it's good to have it all in one place so you can see. Because I don't know which student you're talking about that was sort of used as an example, but I bet if you were to go back and look,
Right.
you would see progress all those years,
Right.
just not enough progress.
Right, and that's exactly, yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking, is that if, and I didn't get a chance, I went to go look for the file and I didn't find it, but if you went back and looked at it, you'd probably see that that student did make progress, but just maybe not the progress that was expected.
Right.
But, so, yeah. Does anyone else have any thoughts about that, or feedback about that?
I would love to have
something like that, if I were a new teacher coming in, particularly not knowing, not being familiar at all with the student body that was coming in, either what was expected currently or the individual needs and current levels of literacy of these individual students.
Does anyone see any like that not working or any issues that would come from that? Like maybe the informal assessment part, like too much.
The informal assessment is probably the hardest part for me because everyone assesses differently. So
Right.
what I might write, is pretty, say I'm really sensitive to one issue, and then Marge might read it and go, that's just the way he is. It's a judgment call. I think
Mhm.
informal assessment is probably the area I probably wouldn't feel comfortable putting into the binder as much as I would put
Mhm.
all the other reading and
Mhm.
writing and that,
Mm-hmm.
because it's so, it's my opinion.
Right. Well, I was just thinking,
It's more of a
especially,
checklist.
yeah,
Put it more on a checklist.
checklist, yeah. And I was also thinking that, yeah, you're right, your notes are probably a little, maybe too,
For myself.
yeah. But also if you maybe had a specific issue or you met, or they were getting special, tutoring,
Right.
or they're getting, that would be something that would at least be beneficial to know. And
Or like you've met with the parents 6 times about, this one issue.
mhm,
It would be really nice to know, to keep that going throughout the
Mhm.
notes. So the first grade doesn't start from scratch and say, oh my God, I had no idea you've been working on this all year.
Right.
Yeah. Really fun.
mhm. I think that if we can have at least some sort of a place where we can communicate that and just be able to see their growth and development, it would just maybe give the incoming teacher a little bit more of where they could start and kind of know.
Is there, we have report cards, and our report cards are incredibly comprehensive.
Right.
I'm not too involved in the math binder because they just started from 2nd grade
Right.
to 3rd grade. But when you think about 3 times a year we have a checklist, 3 times a year we have
Mhm.
a narrative,
Mhm.
twice a year we have parent-teacher conferences. It gets to be overwhelming,
Mhm.
the amount of record keeping
Mhm.
that we do.
Mhm.
My biggest problem, like today, I was thinking, okay, report cards are coming up,
Right.
and I'm noticing things about kids and saying, I gotta write that down. What? Yes, okay, I'll be right there. And
Right.
it's when do you do it?
Right.
And we don't have time before school, after school. I think there are they're good reasons
Mhm.
to go towards portfolio assessment, which is kind of what that is.
Mhm.
But it's time consuming like everything else.
Well, except that the math binder doesn't take any more work than we regularly do
Right.
each year, because you just take the samples and stick it in there. You take the Brigance, you stick it in there. You take the final exam, you stick it in there. So it's no more record keeping than I would already be doing. So this would be, I would assume, the same sort of thing where you're not asked to generate anything new. Just put copies of some of the stuff that you've done in there at the
Right.
end of the year, so that there's a sample of their writing.
Well,
that
instead
can,
of having a writing assessment in a folder,
Right.
it would
Right.
be
right,
Yeah.
right,
consolidated into one
Right.
location.
right.
And maybe we, say, well, no, we're not going to do informal assessments, so maybe there's one thing, or maybe you just have, maybe one thing you do that you could share that just has a little bit more. But even if it were, honestly, even if it were the writing assessment and with a cover sheet where we, just how, I don't know if you don't do it, but the writing the ERB, or no, you do that, the final score and the ERB
Right.
score
Mhm.
in the cover sheet. I don't know if you
Yeah.
know what we're talking about, but there's just a cover sheet, and also you probably don't know either, but for the math we have just a little section where we write what the final test score was, the Brigance score and the ERB score, and so we can kind of see, and then really that's to see what level they're going in for the math.
Mhm.
But if we just even had maybe just a couple things that we just fill out
Well, so Kristen, maybe it would be, you know how there's a rubric for the writing assessment?
Right.
Maybe, because we really aren't putting the tests in the binder, maybe to save space, we would have some way of showing the next year's teacher the outline of this class in terms of spelling, in terms of creative their writing assessments, so that you could look through it from year to year and see, okay, here's somebody who's doing better with applied spelling.
That was Paola's dad. I don't know where Paola is.
She might be down in my room with Lena. That's fine. But she is.
What was the last thing you said?
That it would kind of mimic the math binder, as opposed to putting all of their writing assessments in, and maybe all of the spelling checklists in and everything.
But then where would the writing assessments go?
I agree with Cindy in that I don't know how you would be able to maintain all these writing assessments in a binder like you do with the math.
Well, I know, I mean, today I just went down there and I think I pulled the 7th graders. And yeah, it was probably maybe this thick. So, but I was thinking if we have a binder, K through 5, and then give that binder to middle school, and it was kind of more K through 5 thing, and then maybe in 5th grade it would be 2 binders, maybe. But I know, I do kind of understand it would be kind of
It would be easier
thick.
to put in a binder than to go in
Yeah.
and put it in everybody's. Mine are still on my desk from
Well-
June, so.
Mine are too.
Well, and the thing is, I don't think people read them.
Yeah, you get that feeling. When I was putting mine in, I was like, I don't even know if anybody ever reads these things.
And I think that it's a really great, I mean, it's one of the best ways to really see how they're doing. And when I looked at them, you know, and just see their progression and how, and even just how Cindy corrected them when I've looked at them, because I spent a lot of time, you know, as I
Filling out
was
the rubric.
well, and just kind of preparing to how to do the writing assessments. I looked at a lot of them, and I just thought it was helpful, but to just kind of see them all in one place.
Well, I know from don't some grades pass them on as in a folder to the next grade to look at before they get filed? That's what I've always done with Vicky, is just give us a whole set of them in a folder to look at before they get put into the individual files.
Does anyone else do that?
No.
No, I just filed them.
Sorry, Bruce.
Yeah, I don't think I mean, maybe they asked you to
That
do
could
that because...
Our ultimate goal is to file them.
Yeah.
And it's the end of the year. We've already discussed it.
Wouldn't it be better
It's hard
to
to
give
get
them to
them
somebody else?
Right.
You still have the same amount of filing
Yeah.
to do.
That's safe.
but it just-
Are your, I don't have to look at a math binder, is it watching each child as they went from kindergarten up through 5th grade, or is it all the kindergartners and then all the 1st graders and all the 2nd graders?
Those binders start in 3rd grade, and so it's really to say what level of math they are. So there's
It's
It
the
said-
whole class is in
it's
one
the
line.
whole class.
Okay. But so this would not be a whole class, aren't you saying these would be
She said it
individual?
is.
the whole
It would be a whole class in one binder. It wouldn't just be one
That's what
binder
I'm
for
saying.
each
That would get
kid.
really thick.
Yeah, that would.
Because
But our math binders are probably, you know...
yeah, they're really thick, and it has the year they graduate from Crossroads on them, and it just passes from teacher to teacher. So you can open it up and look at any child and see from 2nd grade
Bruce, do
through
you have
Oh,
yours?
now I'm getting it, okay.
what they've done in math. It has their final exam, their Brigance, and their ERB scores for each year.
Okay. But you just have 3 things.
Right.
So couldn't you, I mean, don't you have 2 formal writing assessments per year in the lower
Well,
school?
I would
We
say
can
just
just
only
do one.
put the final one.
Yeah, just put the final one in.
Okay, yeah, so you're not looking at,
Right.
I mean, there's just the final.
The
you would
final,
copy it,
maybe,
the
and maybe,
cover
and
page with
then,
information with
yeah.
the year